ministers have just announced Christmas will be different this year for thousands of us.
Come on, we'll come in. Ready?
Yeah.
Paper boy's working before he goes. Lying to the teacher, he knows he knows. Didn't I? He should have brought his lines in yesterday. La 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 la. Round down with birds are singing. Round down with the sun shines bright. Round down with the birds sing for you. 'Cause they already know you. They already know you.
There you go, lads.
No thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, you too. Come on then.
Oh, good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it will.
Hello and welcome to the penultimate session in our online event series, Christmas Made Easy, how to plan the perfect Christmas dinner with all the trimmings in association with Co-op. And we've got 45 minutes and we'll be giving you all of our top tips for planning your Christmas feast. And joining me this evening is Diana Henry, who is one of my heroes. She's the most amazing cook and food writer, and also one of the most generous, lovely people I know. And I know she's got loads of fantastic ideas for you for making a
lovely to spend time with you. And welcome to everybody. I know I can't believe this. Essex, Cambridge. Hello from Moscow. Hi, Moscow.
Oh, right, Moscow. Hello,
I don't know if
Andy.
I could teach them anything about Christmas, really, but anyway.
And Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
Wow.
We've got a lot to get through, haven't we? We've got a lot to talk about.
We have got loads. So
Should we start with the turkey? I love the turkey because a lot of people have written to us already about that, because some of you you submitted questions beforehand. And the first one we had was from Tariq Mahana. Should we follow packaging instructions about how to cook a turkey, or should we use our tried and tested methods, or what is your advice? Turkey timings, I think it's a nightmare every year for everyone.
it's really, really tricky. And every year I have this problem, because I think, first of all, if you have tried and trusted timings that you use all the time, then I would use those. Absolutely. Why would you do anything else? You know, how fabulous. The problem with timings by and large is that they're designed by manufacturers or producers who want to be absolutely 1,000% sure that they're not going to get taken to court for giving you food poisoning. So they they're not interested in a way in how good it tastes. What they're interested in is not giving you food poisoning, which it's fair enough, but they tend to go too far, and it is really the reason why turkey often is a bit dry and dull, because it's overcooked, really, because the timings are incredibly long. So I was looking at this today, and the NHS timings I worked out for a 5 kilogram turkey were about 3 hours and 20 minutes, something like that, which is an awfully long time. And if you look at the timings for someone like Kelly Bronze, which admittedly is a free-range native breed turkey, their timings are 2 hours for the same bird. So, and that's all being cooked at 180 degrees centigrade. That's 350 Fahrenheit and gas mark 4. I think that the best way to do it is to have a probe, a temperature probe. I've got one. I'm just in my kitchen at the drawer where I keep all the probes, and there are various probes you can get. Like there's one like this, which you stick this bit on the outside of the oven, and then you stick the probe bit, the sort of wire, into that, and then you stick this bit into the turkey at the thickest point, which can be by the thigh, but some of these huge white turkeys, they're enormous breasts, are actually thickest at the point of the breast, just above the thigh. And you stick it in there, and then you stick this on the outside of the oven, and this will tell you how hot your turkey is inside. And then you have to think about when you're going to take it out, what temperature you're going to take it out. And the readings are 70 degrees centigrade it should get to be 100% safe. But in practice, by the time you get to that temperature, your breast is completely dry, because that is the temperature at which breast meat gets dry. So killing salmonella and most food poisoning, but I'm particularly talking about salmonella here. Am I being really boring?
No,
Diana?
no,
Is this
no,
right?
because every year I sit down and rethink this out again every single time. But the thing that my mum always said, and I think it's kind of true, and I've never used the temperature stuff, so it's probably very dangerous, my approach. But my mum would always say that you could smell it. And the thing I have done is to check constantly during the cooking, because some turkeys, they seem to cook more quickly than others do, and it's not to do with their size. It just seems to be that they're a thing in their own right or something. So
Well, partly, yes. Well, lots of things make a difference. One is taking the turkey out of the fridge and getting it to room temperature, which takes between 1 and 2 hours before you put it in the oven. And things like the NHS timings are based on the idea you're taking it straight out of the fridge and into the oven, which, because it's really cold all the way through, it's probably about 3 degrees all the way through, it's going to be really hard for the heat to get into the middle. The other thing is, I would say, don't put anything inside. No stuffing. Don't, whatever the recipe says, don't put a lemon in there or an orange or any of those things, and don't have it trussed. Have the legs open.
The heat gets much with
when the heat gets in, you've got this big cavity, and all the heat rushes in, and that's particularly true for rare breed birds. I mean, it's true for all birds, in fact, but rare breed birds have bigger cavities, and the sort of the flesh is less thick on the carcass, so they will cook a bit more quickly. By rare breed, I mean things like Norfolk Black, that kind of bird, a named breed rather than the big white turkeys. But the other thing is that if you cook you can cook at a lower temperature for longer, and it will be safe. So there's a whole table, which if anyone is interested, they can email me at Telegraph, my address, xanthe.claire@telegraph.co.uk, and I can send it to you. But there's a whole chart which explains that you can cook it to 60 as long as you hold it for a certain number of minutes. If it gets to 65 for 4 minutes, then it is safe. And if you take it out of the oven at 60, it will rise in temperature while it rests for about, because you're going to leave it to rest for about 45 minutes to an hour. And during that time, it will rise to about 67, 68. So it will hit 65 for much more than 4 minutes. And it's 65 at 4 minutes, which is what you need to be sure of.
I'm quite glad that I'm doing a chicken this year.
Oh, sorry.
There's a very small amount of us. There's only 4, possibly 6. So I have just already ordered a very large bird, a very large chicken, and that was actually I haven't cooked a turkey for quite a while, but I don't have to worry about it, because it's just like, you know, you cook a chicken all the time, so it'll just be like Sunday lunch, but a little bit more fancy than usual.
But I think that's lovely, because actually lots of people don't even cook Sunday lunch now. So actually to do really proper, all the bells and whistles Sunday lunch, what a massive Christmas treat.
What are you going to have? Are you going to have a turkey?
We did have a turkey last year. We had a lovely native breed turkey, but this year there's a fewer of us for obvious reasons. So we're going to have a goose. I'm really excited about having a goose.
Not enough meat. We can't. You don't get any leftovers, so even the chicken will give me some leftovers. But that's what we always find, that we can run out of meat too soon.
But you do get amazing stock. You put all the bones into the slow cooker with water and an onion and a few bay leaves and a carrot, whatever, and fantastic. Leave it overnight. Amazing.
John
stock.
Beaumont Kerridge has asked how best to unfreeze a 12-pound turkey, which is what he's dealing with.
So yeah, turkey, a 12-pound turkey is going to take you probably a couple of days in the fridge to defrost. And the problem is everybody's fridge runs at a slightly different temperature. And I don't know about your fridge, but my fridge is much colder at the bottom than at the top. And I would always defrost my turkey at the bottom anyway, because it's because you've got the salad drawer at the bottom, and I just empty out the salad drawer and I put the turkey in there, and that's where it stays. So you may have to allow a bit longer, and that's when a probe works as well. And I think somebody asked how to use a non-digital probe, and they're fine. You just stick them in and there's a dial and it whizzes round and shows you the temperature, but you can't leave it in all the time. You have to take it out every time.
A lot of people, obviously, because this happens every year, they have asked about what you can really do in advance. I mean, I do a lot in advance. I make my gravy even the day before, because there's never, if you have the usual large crowd, there's never enough gravy. So I make my stock and I do all that, and then I add the turkey juices to it on the day. But I think that it stops that pressure at the end of cooking where you think, oh, it's the gravy now. It's the gravy now.
Also, you know, it's a really hot and sweaty job making the gravy.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, love the gravy, but you know, all that standing over the hot, you know, and frying up the flour and things like that. You know, I've had a few glasses of wine maybe by then, just possibly, and you know, I've maybe got my best dress on and I'm trying to be relaxed and then, you know, and not arguing with my family. And getting hot and bothered over the gravy is just, I don't need
and
it.
vegetables,
No,
I will always do red cabbage, and I do that ahead, and then I add on. I do it with cook it with star anise, and then on the day I add blackberries to it as well. But I think this dish is very good because it's there. And another thing is some kind of vegetable puree, a puree of leeks or Jerusalem artichokes or fennel or pumpkin. Then all you
I do a beetroot puree, half roasted beetroot pureed with an equal volume of potatoes, boiled potatoes,
right,
mixed together. So it's equal volumes mixed together, little bit of sour cream, and if I'm feeling fancy, some dill over the top. And it's amazing. And you can freeze it. Like you can freeze red cabbage as well.
I do not puree, grate it. It's cooked and it's grated, and I grate it with apple as well. Then that just to be reheated, put dill in it, do some sour cream on the top, and then I make this a kind of spicy butter with cayenne and butter and pour that over it at the end. Some caraway in as well. That's really good. That's nice. And that all you have to do is reheat that and add the extra bits. So I think that's good. I mean, the only thing, if you want to have roast root vegetables, you need to do those. I do those on the day, and Brussels sprouts have to be done on the day. But you do your roast potatoes partly in advance, don't you?
I do. And actually, if I've got a big crowd, I probably won't this year because there's not that many of us. But if I have a big crowd, I might do things like peeling the carrots and getting them in the right shapes, and peeling the Brussels sprouts and cutting them in half. And put them
prepare the stuff and I put it in water. I mean,
the night before.
Yes.
I mean, technically, it's not, you know, nutritionally ideal, but that's not really what's top of my agenda for Christmas dinner. So, yeah, potatoes. Potatoes it's a bit like gravy. Me, best frock, glass of champagne, boiling fat. It's a really bad combination. You know, I just no. So what I do is I do a method that is invented by a guy called J. Kenji Lopez Alt, which is a fantastic name, but he is an American writer. And what he does is he boils the potatoes in the usual way that you would boil them for roast potatoes. So for about 10 minutes in boiling water, so they're just going a little bit crumbly around the edges. And then you shake them up a bit, as you would usually, and then scatter them with a little bit of semolina, or you can just use flour, that's fine. But semolina's nice, fine semolina gives a particularly good crunchy finish. And a little bit of whatever fat you're using, and that might be goose fat, or it might be olive oil, or you know, whatever it is you're using for it. And you mix that all together, so you get a sort of paste on the outside of the potatoes of kind of semolina and potatoiness and fat. And then to spread those on a tray and leave them in the fridge overnight. Or leave them, actually even better, just leave them on the windowsill of a cool room. And then the next day you just pop them in the oven. After the turkey comes out, in goes the potatoes, because it's very difficult to get potatoes to go really good and crisp with a big turkey in there because it's creating so much steam.
And you think those are as good if you do them in advance as if you do them fresh on the day? Yeah.
Well, I think so. I mean, okay, if you're going to do them really, really properly fresh, and do it, you know, in a thick bit of fat, you know, so you've got a layer of fat on the top, and you put your pan on the hob, and you put the heat on under the hob, and you get all that fat really hot, and then you tip in your potatoes and you mix them all up, you know, splashing boiling fat, you know, and then put that in the oven. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. That is really, really delicious. I just think if there's one cook, and how many dishes going onto the table? Maybe 8 different dishes, if you count the gravy and the cranberry sauce.
It's like compromise, partly.
It's a bit of but it's not a bad compromise. And people love them.
Do you think, has asked if you make anything in advance and freeze it, what can be frozen before the
red cabbage that we talked about, definitely.
Oh, I think purees, any vegetable puree could as well.
All those purees, definitely. Brandy butter.
Yeah.
Although what I would say is brandy butter is one of those things that you can give to somebody else to do. You know, when someone wanders into the kitchen and says, how can I help? And it's quite a nice job to give them because it's, you know, doesn't take lots of ingredients, or you can just give them the stuff and send them. And then it's nice to involve people. But you can make that, definitely. You can freeze.
And I always do my stuffing the day before, even though I don't. I just get it ready. And everything for the bread sauce. Just if things are weighed out and nicely, the mise en place is all done, in other words.
Yeah. And gravy, actually, because I quite often would make gravy by roasting off chicken wings and then cooking them down to make a really, really lovely, strong chickeny stock. And then I'd thicken that up a bit. And that you could freeze. You could do that a couple of weeks ahead. And then, as Diana said, add in the turkey juices or whatever you're having juices on the day.
Lots of people are asking about vegetarian options that can stand alongside the turkey, that can kind of compete well with it. It doesn't feel like a side dish or a kind of side issue. And I quite often, because they just seem like centerpiece things, I quite often end up suggesting pies, but pies that, that are a bit better than usual, that are a bit more glamorous, if that's the word, like wild mushroom, chestnut potato, celeriac, layered up as if you might do a dauphinoise, so you've cooked it in some cream and sour cream before you put it in, and then you have your puff pastry top on that. I think that's really delicious.
So delicious.
Yeah, if you go to the Telegraph, actually, for both Xanthe and I, they've put up our recipes for these kind of things on the Telegraph food site, so you'll be able to find alternative Christmas side dishes for vegetables and also main courses as well. But I think I have up there a wild mushroom, spinach and herb galette, the pie that I just mentioned. And gratins are lovely as well, but you need to do something a bit special with them. So maybe celeriac, leek, layers of beetroot and dill or horseradish. So there are lots of things that you make already that you can just make a little bit more special, and that becomes a vegetable centerpiece. So it's quite good.
I think it's really nice as well to have something like that, which can also be shared by everyone else, because you can bet one thing: if you give the vegetarian something different, everybody on the table will be like looking. They'll be like, "Oh,
that's the thing. Finding things that work in, because I can suggest, kind of like 7 vegetable couscous, so that's a Moroccan thing. Or I do a thing which vegetarians really love, which is roast vegetables, root vegetables mostly, but celeriac and stuff like that as well. And then I make miso and walnut dressing which is kind of I serve it warm, so it's crushed walnuts, garlic, red miso, and I put olive oil.
I've made that one. That's in your your one dish,
the table, in that one. And that was just because it's actually quite meaty, because the red miso makes it very substantial. But I don't always think it goes very well with the turkey. It's kind of good for meaty, for people who want vegetables on their own. But I'm worried about whether it really goes well with the turkey or not. But if you're having all vegetarians, that, or I think a Moroccan.
And that's vegan, in fact. So it's completely vegan. And actually, I know that recipe of yours, which I completely love, and one of the vegetables you put with it is radicchio, the red radicchio leaves.
Yeah, no, you can make wonderful colours. But the thing about vegetable dishes is, a turkey on a platter looks wonderful, but you can't have it. You need to have a statement dish, really, when you're doing the vegetables as well. So something that's quite sprawly, lots of different colours, lots of different textures. I think that's what you need when you're looking for a vegetable main course.
Definitely. Just on a freezing note, I just noticed Pamela, I think, just said that she freezes her cranberry sauce, which is a fantastic idea. You could definitely do that. But also her bread sauce, which I've never tried. That's a very intriguing idea. I'll give that one a go.
In advance. I've never done that. I'd be worried about that splitting, but maybe it's worth trying.
Yeah. Worth a try. Now I'm just going to open this bottle. Whoa!
This is the first day I have felt remotely Christmassy. Actually, we're going to watch. After you and I finish, we're going to watch "It's a Wonderful Life" because we're trying to get into the festive spirit. But I've got my champagne here. I've also got. This is very nice. This is Glenmorangie this year have done what they call a cake whiskey, and it smells. It's a limited edition. Smells of Christmas cake, so raisiny. So I've got that. Look, all my little chasers, the champagne. And the whiskey.
Champagne. It was lovely. This is one that Victoria recommended.
Victoria.
I think it's in the chat bar. Oh, look, lots of little say bread sauce freezes fine. That's fantastic.
I'm going to try it.
Sorry? well, bread sauce, one thing I have done in advance, not as clever as freezing it, but that whole infusing the milk thing, I've done that in advance the day before and just had it in the fridge.
That makes sense.
Because you know what, it's another pan on the stove when you need all the hot wings, and it's me, it'll boil over, you know, something. So just get it done.
Good idea. Mary Granville would like interesting starter ideas. So starter's a funny thing on Christmas Day because it's kind of, you don't really need it actually, but you want something.
It is really tricky because what I don't want is for people to get a bit full before they get to the main event, so to speak. But I mean, smoked salmon's a classic and people do love it.
I think my children still like that actually, if they have it with very good soda or wheaten bread. But they're asking for Richard Corrigan's this year because I made his recently actually. We'll have that if we're going to have Richard Corrigan's.
Good Irish boys, quite right.
Yes,
fantastic with that. And also what you can do with that is have it like standing up with drinks before you go and sit down, which is quite nice because you're likely to be sitting down for quite a long time. So
there's also, I have made very often gravlax, some kind of gravlax. And in fact, on the Telegraph site as well, they put up the recipe for this. I make one with whiskey and brown sugar, and then it has an apple and fennel relish that goes with it. And I'm always trying to get alcohol in everywhere, but I think you can really sort of taste that. There's dill in it as well, so it's a proper gravlax. But that I think is really delicious. Or a beetroot gravlax.
I often do a beetroot one because you get that very pretty pink edge, which looks sort of glorious.
And something I made earlier on.
People say something a bit lighter for a Christmas starter. Maybe salmon's a bit much. I would actually, because we've been talking about radicchio, and maybe you've already got it going in for your main course, but bitterness is really great on the palate. That's why people love to have Campari or Negronis or things like that before they eat. And so actually a really light little radicchio salad with some walnuts, which I've caramelized, and a little bit of sugar and a little bit of spice scattered over the top, just really simple. I think that would be lovely and would just sort of open up your palate.
Salad is always lovely as a starter, I think. I have trouble persuading my children that they want that, though. That's kind of like not high on their agenda of things that would be popular. I can't believe that there are people who don't actually like Christmas pudding. I absolutely love it. Mine, I've already steamed 2. They're all been, I recovered them today in all nice new paper. You've done yours. Yours is all beautiful in cloth and everything. Mine's just covered in oil and greaseproof.
You know, I used to do that, but then I just discovered that the cloth thing, I mean, it looks really cute, but actually I find it's much easier to lift out of the water than the string. Somehow the string always feels really unstable, and this is really solid. And the other thing is that because it's a cloth, it seems, you know how you get that like little pond of water on top of the pudding, which is this absorbs that, so you don't get any of that.
You think that's making the inside soggy. I always worry about the pudding. I mean, I've got so much alcohol in mine. Have you? That's done. I presume everybody has done them, but they don't have to.
Oh goodness. Okay, I'm going to tell you. So I actually did this today because I did a whole piece on Christmas puddings a few weeks ago, which you may have seen. And but for that, I had to cook them all and then turn them out and eat them and taste them. So I can't actually keep any of them till Christmas. And I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, I haven't actually done the one that we're going to eat. So this is my husband's grandmother's Christmas pudding recipe, which I found in old notebooks.
I've been doing the same one for years, but mine it's soaked in whatever kind of Christmassy beer I can find to soak the dried fruit, and then it's got mashed banana and grated raw apple in it, which I can. No, honestly, I've tried. I mean, I know everybody thinks our Christmas pudding is the best, but mine really is pretty spectacular, and it's the highlight of my Christmas day. Actually, I think it's beautiful, but not everybody likes it, and they want to think of alternatives to it. And I think there's endless alternatives to it, I've got to say. I'm very fond of your Christmasified bread and butter pudding. So bread and butter pudding, the way you normally do it, but you spread some mincemeat, just kind of like a layer over the bread as you're layering it up. Stuff without suet, ideally, and very diced apple. And sometimes I put in some fresh cranberries as well, whack it in the nose. It's always whiskey for me when it comes to a Christmas bread and butter pudding. Or you can go with bourbon, and then you can put some nutmeg and some cinnamon into the custard, and it's kind of eggnog-y for bread and butter pudding.
Yeah.
But those are good, and those kind of, they're quite like a very light version of Christmas pudding in a way, if you think about it.
They are. Or the other one, which I love, which has a bit of theatre, is to do a baked Alaska. And if you do a baked Alaska, you can set light to it, so you still get to flame it.
I would attempt that at the end of after the turkey. Absolutely, I'm done then. Honestly, someone else can look at the flaming, and both can organise the flaming.
But it's one of those things that sounds really hard and is so easy, and everyone thinks
No,
it's
it's true, actually. I mean, it is spectacular, completely theatrical. Trifle's good though. I mean, I think trifle is great because people tend to think it's a bit dull, but it's just, you always have the same components, but then you can flavor it in any way that you like. A couple of years ago, I did one, it was figs poached in port. And then I made a pistachio cake. So that was a sponge, fig jam, a custard flavored with cardamom, and then a cream on the top that had a little bit of rosewater in it. So it was kind of like Arabian Nights kind of trifle. But they can be as kind of blousy as that, or they can be as homely as doing one with actually pears poached in port and cranberries. So just port and cranberries and pears. That's nice, I think, for one. Or I did one recently, that's up on the Telegraph site as well. Apples, butterscotch, blackberries for someone who doesn't want one that's kind of like too boozy and they want it to be kind of simple. I think that's good. But there's endless riffs on it. I actually do like an ice of some kind because they're very cleansing, like a spice wine sorbet or a spice wine granita, or even though they're not in season yet, you can get blood orange, freshly squeezed blood orange juice, mix that with pomegranate juice, and that is it's beautiful looking as well because it's very jewel-like at the end of the meal.
And I sometimes think actually that for people who do find Christmas pudding a bit much, and I kind of like Christmas pudding, but for me, it's almost wasted at the end of the Christmas meal when you've had so much other food. I have friends who always have their Christmas pudding on Boxing Day, which I think is kind of genius idea actually, but my family want it on Christmas Day, and that's fine. But it's really lovely. I've done in the past a brandy panna cotta and some little poached clementines and a little slice of Christmas pudding, and so you have the three of them together on a plate.
Lovely.
Really nice actually, because you're still getting your Christmas pudding, but just a little bit.
Do you bother with the cheese and stuff? I don't do any of that. By the time we come to the end, we've done it.
I think that's right. Oh, somebody's accusing me of drinking Prosecco. It's not, it's champagne. I just want to make that point. I much prefer champagne. Yes, my family love cheese. So we do have cheese. We have what my mother used to call a dessert, like an old fashioned 18th century dessert with figs and those muscat raisins that come on a bunch, and chocolates and quince cheese and nuts and fruit and cheese.
That's kind of lovely. If you want to just do a pudding that's not, you haven't had to put any effort into it except kind of buying them, clementines with their leaves on, and membrillo and nuts and muscat grapes and that kind of thing. They're really beautiful. Or just go straight onto a dessert wine, Sauterne or Tokay or something like that. I mean, because you don't buy them, the rest of the year.
Also, saying they have junket on Boxing Day. That's a lovely, simple, light pudding.
I've never made them.
I read it in bottles. Langdale's do it, I think, but it's quite hard to find. You might have to look online.
I've got it online before.
Yeah.
Leftovers.
Leftovers. Which kind of the best bit?
Well, the turkey on Boxing Day. I think everybody's looking forward to that before they get to Christmas Eve.
Yes, I agree. Fantastic sandwiches, particularly if you can put some crispy bacon in there as well.
And I must say, I think that turkey and ham pie is hard to beat, and we'll make that every year. And that's a kind of Boxing Day thing. And it's old fashioned. You make the bechamel sauce. You can have a short crust pastry that you make yourself, or you can use puff pastry on top of it. And it's simple. I mean, things have changed. I mean, nobody makes turkey a la king anymore. I don't think. I don't know if you do, but that's a thing from my mother's generation. But turkey pie is lovely. And another thing I discovered last year was, and it was a big hit, a kind of croque monsieur bread pudding. So cheese and some of the ham that you've got left if you've had a ham, and you make this basically a savoury bread and butter pudding, and that's very good. I think that's delicious. And a crumble, if you can make a cheese and ham crumble, or a turkey and ham crumble, so you don't have to go to the effort of making the pastry. So you just make a crumble with some cheddar in it and some hazelnuts, and that goes on the top. And I it's kind of like, I don't make stuff that's that old fashioned the rest of the year. So I think it's kind of fine to do it when it gets to the leftovers for Christmas. It's okay.
Yeah, and also though I quite like making sort of slightly bringing in some Asian flavors as well.
Had enough British stuff like that.
I kind of had quite a lot of the sort of heavy traditional stuff, and I've got a piece coming out on Boxing Day actually with some recipes for things like chopping up your turkey and mixing it with fish sauce and lime and things, and then using it to stuff lettuce leaves. So you do it with your hands, and it's really fresh and bright, and with chilies if you want as well, and things like that. And I think that somehow is quite a nice counterpoint to all the
kind of, if you make your broth from the turkey bones and you flavour that with lime, fish sauce, sugar, chilies, because you do, by the time Boxing Day's finished, you really do yearn for that again, because you've been eating kind of Christmassy traditional stuff from almost the beginning of December, really. Are you doing any cooking to take to neighbours this year? I think Christmas is quite different this year compared to what it has been. So I've got a piece coming out this Sunday about making pies or making pasta bakes, or I've got a damson bakewell tart as well. So to make things that are a bit different but aren't just fudge or chutney or that kind of thing, and carrying that to people, because it seems like this year has changed things. It's a bit, I know what community means more at the end of this year than I did at the beginning. I've shopped for my neighbours, they've shopped for me, and I'm aware of who's on their own in my street much more than I used to be. And I don't think that makes it a sad thing necessarily. I think there's a good thing about Christmas being a bit reduced this year in a way. I don't know what you feel.
Yes, I think it's different this year, but actually it's kind of really special this year. Feels really important to make it special. And yeah, you're right, to include the community who's been so important.
No, to look after the people near you. I think it really is. I knew my neighbours, but I know them much better after the last 6 months than I did before.
I think
Someone is asking about stuffings. Yes, I presume kind of like interesting ways to do it. That's the thing, I know, because I have so many ideas usually about what to do. I don't know where to kind of like draw the line. This year we're having, because it's already been discussed with the children, cornbread, bacon, celery, and a little bit of cayenne. So it's quite southern, I suppose, United States. And that'll be lovely, but that'll be a bit different. But I'm very fond of them with fruit usually. I make a rye, sausage, chestnut, and prune one in goose, which is really wonderful. I love that.
I think the fruit ones are really good in goose, actually. And I've just made one, just tested a recipe, which is now what we're going to have for Christmas Day, which is the simplest stuffing you could possibly imagine. And all it is you get 500 grams of chopped Bramley apple, and then 250 grams of dried apricots, but not the orange ones, the brown, unsulfured ones. Do you know the ones I mean? And you cut the apricots in half, you mix them with the chopped apple, and you shove it in your goose with a bit of salt and pepper. That's it. And what happens with the apricots is they go really smoky. So you always think like you've added some smoked paprika or something to it, but it just makes this incredibly delicious kind of smoky, gunky stuff.
Someone's asking about bread for it. Should they be using wholemeal or sourdough or wheat?
Well, it's a really good question, because some recipes really need that kind of, mother's pride, white sliced bread, because you want that fine breadcrumb, which you can't really get from a true sourdough. It's going to give you kind of big bigger
Yeah.
bits, but that can be lovely as well. I love a stuffing which has got those sort of big ripped chunks of bread on top that go really craggy and glorious. So they're different, but they'll both work. I'd be a bit careful about some of the stronger rye breads. I think if the recipe calls for it, that's great, but I wouldn't just like put it in because they are quite assertive.
And some people quite like sweet ones. I read about a brioche stuffing just recently. Brioche, bacon, spring onions, that kind of thing. I would have thought it might be too sweet, but I can see that maybe that would work.
I think, yeah, it might do, because I thought my apricot stuffing would be too sweet and it wasn't. So maybe it does. And it's very American, isn't it? Again, to use sweet things like that.
They call them dressings. Have you ever done beef? Someone's asking about beef Wellington. That's what they're planning to do.
I haven't done beef Wellington for Christmas, actually. I've done a big rib of beef several times. And I love that. I mean, it's just a cracking thing to put on the Christmas table. And also the beef sandwiches afterwards are just so fantastic.
Because that used to be, before we started to eat turkey, it was beef that was eaten in the north and goose that was eaten in the south, apparently. And turkey didn't become a thing until, well, the 1930s, but it was very expensive actually when we first started to eat it. It's become much, much less so over the years. But yes, goose and beef were the traditional things before I keep wondering if the turkey will ever kind of go out of fashion, but I suppose it's such good value for money. And
it's really good value. And if you're feeding a huge number of people, can't beat it. I mean, there's nothing else that will feed that many people, really.
Someone has said, any ideas for leftover ham other than cold or in pies? I would say a risotto. There's a risotto from the north of Italy. I can't remember which book I got it years ago. It's called Antico Risotto Sabodo, and it's with chunks of ham, and you should have in it taleggio or frontina or one of those very kind of melting cheeses. And that is, I mean, wait for a few days after Christmas because it is really rich. But that is a wonderful way to use ham, I think. We don't think about putting it into risotto because we don't usually have it. Nice too, because we mentioned before bitter leaves, but that would be good with some chestnuts and some bitter leaves, such as radicchio, in a risotto as well. Someone has asked for, Christmas Eve. What ideas for Christmas Eve? It's Mary Granville.
Oysters is a lovely idea.
Oysters.
Oh, fantastic. So you need to make it really special. I think fish is great on Christmas Eve. It's a treat, really, because nice fish is really expensive. It's special. Oysters, definitely. Fantastic.
And if
what a gorgeous way.
I think a fish pie is really good. I mean, I nearly always end up doing those. Or
I tend to do a big
spread.
I do a big fish stew with, just cooking lots of different kinds of fish and some shellfish and some clams and things in a broth with some saffron and some leeks, and eat it out of deep, those deep soup plates.
I never do the whole Scandinavian spread, because they have the whole Eula spread on Christmas Eve, but I will do bits of it. So Janssen's Temptation, so the potato gratin with the Swedish anchovies in it, or meatballs, Scandinavian meatballs with lingonberry sauce. That it's kind of festive, I think, that for Christmas Eve. Although usually, we usually have kind of with fish pie early, and then I'm cooking most of the evening, I've got to say, to get ready for the next day. In years past, it would have been when I was growing up at home, it was the year that my parents had a drinks party, so I seemed to be making vol au vents till midnight, and then the sherry trifle was attacked after that. But yeah, things are changed, so I don't do that so much now. Pea and ham chowder, fish soup, freezes very well, says Elaine Smith. That's what we should be doing with her.
I was just asking how long the turkey will keep after Christmas, and usually we'd say about 3 days. But what I would also always do on Boxing Day is just strip it all off the bones and then put the bones into a stock pot and make stock with them, and then separate the meat into brown and white and kind of scraggy bits, which will be good for risotto or whatever. And then you can freeze those, and you can freeze those for a couple of months.
I'm just looking to see what anybody said here. How do you cook ham? How do you not end up with a ham that's very salty?
Oh, well, these days hams are much better because they used to be really salty because the salt was there actually to preserve them. But over the last, I think even over the last decade or so, they've got much less salty. So they tend not to need soaking in the same way. But if you're worried, you should definitely soak your ham in water for 24 hours.
And you can ask the butcher, if you're getting it from him, he'll probably know what the puree is.
He'll know what you need to do. Yes, I mean, if there's Duke's Hill, it's a fantastic company that sells hams, and all their hams are fine to cook from scratch, except for one, and they have one where they specifically say this is an old-fashioned style of ham, a black ham, and it will need soaking. And I've had one, and it needs a good 48 hours soaking.
Do you always do it on the bone, or do you mind having a ham that's off the bone, and you cook a joint like that?
I'd rather do it on the bone because I love the bone for making stock. I'm obsessed with making stock. I've always got a pot of stock on the go, and the stock from a ham bone is just so fantastic. But yeah, no, sure. If you've got fewer people coming, yeah, be delicious. A gammon joint. Cook that up.
Different cooking times for each of those. If we're just cooking it in water, before we put it in the oven, what would you say per?
Oh, I haven't got those on the top of my head, but it's about a couple of hours simmering for a big ham. One thing you do have to be careful with the big hams, though, is if you get one of the whoppers with a bone in, you are going to need a huge pot to put it in. So do be aware of that.
That's the other thing I was going to say, that we're talking about what you need to sort in advance. The things that we quite often don't think about is the size of our ovens and what we can put in them, whether we've got dishes big enough to go in there, whether we've got roasting tins that are big enough to take the turkey. I mean, I've ended up in places that are unfamiliar to me and find that on Christmas Day, I couldn't actually quite put the turkey into the oven in its state. And it does happen. So especially if you're not at home, you should be looking at what size you need and what size of dish you need to put it into. And also getting all your dishes, your serving dishes ready the day before, because there'll be some people who have kind of got things that they only use on special occasions, and it's good to pull those out of cupboards, I think. Wash them.
And actually what I do, which is a bit sad, but I lay out the serving dishes on the kitchen table, and I put a piece of paper with, Brussels sprouts, carrots, whatever, in each one, so I know what is going in each dish. And it sounds really sad, but when you've got all these things happening in your head, it actually really helps.
No, I mean, because you can't, when you're so busy concentrating on the cooking the next day, you don't want to think about the dishes. Someone is saying glazes for ham. This is Joyce Goodchild. I've done, marmalade,
maple syrup,
quince jelly.
Yeah.
I think I've done in the past kind of pineapple chutney with star anise in it as well, which is a sort of Australian idea.
Gorgeous.
There are quite a lot of things. Someone's just saying honey and mustard. You can do plain things, but you can do things that are quite exotic as well.
Yeah, I mean, all that matters is it's got some sugar in. It needs to be sweet so that it glazes.
I don't know if you find, but you do have to go back. You do have to go back and keep putting the glaze up over it again, because it can all kind of like completely run off. You have to kind of like keep.
Oh yeah, no, you probably
so it
3 times.
takes a bit of attention.
Yeah.
Kate Mozzicarelli is asking if there are special things for breakfast on Christmas morning.
Well, can I just say marmalade, fantastic on ham, someone's just said. But yes, back to breakfast. Yes, breakfast is a really tricky one because, if you've got teenagers, when are they going to roll down? On the other hand, if you've got under 10s, they'll probably be up from 5 in the morning. Anyone who's been to midnight mass the night before might be a bit later down for breakfast. So I like to keep it almost buffet style, so people can just tip up when they want. So jars of granola, yogurt, poached fruit, and I might delegate somebody else to be egg chef.
I try very often to push the Scandinavian thing because I'm very keen on that. So Gravlax smoked salmon, hard-boiled eggs with sour cream, and salmon caviar. As long as you're going to have your Christmas meal in the evening, You don't want to eat that at breakfast and then have lunch at 1. That's kind of heavy. But yeah, I'm very fond. It's just a bit different, although I can't persuade anybody to like herrings as much as me. But I would have a Scandinavian breakfast every morning if I could.
Do you have that,
Yeah.
you know, that Scandinavian thing they always have, which is like fish roe in a toothpaste tube?
I don't, do you know what? The other day I came across a recipe for how you can make that yourself. So this could be my new thing for 2021, that I can even do the stuff that Scandinavians eat from toothpaste tubes, but it's their fish paste.
Oh, somebody just asked how the cloth is on this Christmas pudding, which I'm just going to show you very quickly, because actually it's a really good thing to show you because it's quite hard to describe in the newspaper. But basically it's tied like that. Can you see it's tied round? And it's just underneath the lip. So I tie it about 1 centimetre below the lip, because then if there's any give, it'll just rise
And is
up.
that muslin or just cotton?
This is just a tea towel. It's just an old tea towel.
Oh, right. Okay. But that's good. I can do that with mine, actually. But I never thought of that. I think that's wonderful.
Move this. So I've just knotted it on top, and then just bringing the other 2 underneath where I've knotted it, the other 2 corners, opposite corners. Woo. Gosh, this is much harder to do on screen than when I just did it. There we go. There we go. And then they knot 2. And
I know. I think it's wonderful. I don't know why I never thought of this. Also, if you're actually making them to give to somebody, that's really nice, because they get the cloth as well, and it looks. I mean, it looks deliciously old-fashioned, much better than just delivering something with foil on it. That looks wonderful.
The only thing I would say is you cook it once like that. Obviously, you do your pre-cooking like that, and then I will take the tea towel off because it'll be wet, obviously. I put a new dry one on, and the other one will fit.
And when you do the steam on Christmas Day, how long is steam? Because it's, you know, you've done the big one, but I find it's quite often you read that you should do the same amount of steaming time on Christmas Day as you've done before. I don't think you need that.
You don't need to do that. No, 1.5 hours for 2 to 2 hours. 1.5 hours for a normal size one like that. If you've got a bigger one, I give it a couple of hours. That would be fine. But I always do mine in the slow cooker, because it frees up one of my hob spaces. So I just get the slow cooker going, and then it can be in a cupboard. It can be anywhere, and that means it takes a bit longer, so I would allow 4 hours for that. But you know what, it doesn't care. I put it on in the morning and forget about it.
That's the thing, you can't actually overcook them.
And it'll never boil dry in a slow
No.
cooker, so you can literally just forget about it. And actually the other thing I bought last year, actually I'm not sure I should admit this, but we never had a hostess trolley when I was little. My mum didn't have one, so I didn't know what they were about. And last year I went out and bought one, not the kind with the dishes in the top, just a sort of heated cupboard. I bought a little heated cupboard, and it was amazing. We had 14 people for Christmas dinner, and it just meant there was somewhere to heat all the plates. There was somewhere for all the serving dishes to get hot. There was, you know, and I bought it on Gumtree for £30.
I never even thought of that. Since you've confessed to that, though, I'll confess to actually eating Christmas pudding on Boxing Day, late in the evening, cooked in the microwave, warmed up.
It's a great place
on my
to get
own. It's a very, you know, it's just a private treat. That's fine.
Yum.
I think.
I bet it tasted even better.
I think our time is up. I think it's time to say
Oh my goodness.
goodbye and Merry Christmas, and find all the things that we've been talking about, the recipes, the ideas. They're on. Well, mine are on my page on the Telegraph website. Xanthe's will be on her page, and she's just done the most amazing piece about how to completely do Christmas, everything that you could possibly need to know, and the kind of piece that I always go to every year, even though I should know myself. But beyond that, there are ideas, recipes, alternative to Christmas puddings, main course, vegetarian dishes, vegetable side dishes, interesting starters, everything basically.
All of that.
And you can
so
also
much.
get in touch with either of us if you need anything sorted or confirmed or explained.
Or email me at askxanthe@telegraph.co.uk, and because I got a column for asking questions, and there's a prize for the best letter each week from Thermopen, which is one of the digital thermometers that we were talking about earlier. and it's a really good one. I'm not just saying that, it really is. Anyway, it is time to wrap up now. Thank you so much, Diane. You've been a complete star. I want to all of
everybody who's joined. It's been, because we don't get to, well, we get to hear a little bit of you. At least we can see your questions coming in, but it's great to be able to talk to you.